Hello, Patreon friends. It's Eddie Garcia and Doug Stolahan to give you a little special content. We are 2 days into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we have already seen a lot of things to be very interested in. And just wanted to give you, again, some extra content to say thank you for all of your support. And Doug, I guess the most interesting thing so far, and I guess it's not shocking because we've seen this in the Stanley Cup playoffs before. Home ice advantage isn't always as big an advantage as we might like to think it is, but through 8 games, 2 days of action, the home teams are 2-6.
Yeah, and the only two that have won are the two that are the clear favorites, Boston and Carolina. Um, I think every other series is so evenly matched. I'm surprised by Colorado, Seattle, but every other, I mean, I picked the Rangers to win the series. You picked the Lightning to win the series. I picked the Wild to win the series. So it's not, and a lot of people are picking the Jets. So it's not a real shock to see some of these teams losing, but just the uniformity across the league. The first two games, Boston and Carolina both win on home ice. The next 6 games are all the road team, two of them in overtime. So it's it served put on notice immediately if these teams thought they were the higher seed and they had earned something over the season that it's worthless, and you got to re-earn everything you do from now on.
We've seen some significant injury news so far as well. Joe Pavelski took a big hit in that game one against Minnesota. Matt Dumba putting a hit on him, and he left, didn't look good, and he's not playing in game number two. Patrice Bergeron did not play in the opening game for Boston, and he's not playing in game number two as well. Um, what other
I'm
ones are we
starting to
seeing?
think he's not resting.
Hmm.
I mean, they said it's illness. So I had a cold that was took me more than a week to get over a few weeks ago, and if that's what they're going through, then I can see them not playing. And it's apparently ripping its way through the Bruins, and I saw Frederick Anderson is out in net for Carolina tonight. He's not even the backup because of illness, so
Yeah,
it
I
made its way
wasn't.
through Carolina as well.
I thought. I thought that Rod Brindamore was pulling kind of a crafty move there and trying to kind of shock the system a little bit. We know that they hadn't been playing great going into the playoffs. I thought that was a move by him to kind of wake the team up and do something kind of edgy going into game one, but apparently he wasn't. Apparently there was an illness there. Victor Hedman also hurt for Tampa Bay. So there are just a few days in, we're already seeing some
They
some
lost
injuries of
somebody
note.
else that same no Eric Cernak with the
Right.
dirty hit from Michael
And
Bunting.
how about that? A 3-game suspension in the playoffs by the NHL on the Michael Bunting hit to the head of Victor Hedman. That's
You'll
uh,
have to refresh my memory. Michael Bunting have a history?
not that I not that I recall. No.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty extreme for the
Yeah, me
NHL,
too.
especially. I would have expected a game. That's what I was expecting. Two would have been nice. Three seems a bit much. I mean, it was a very dirty hit, though. I mean, he literally leapt up to hit the guy in the head and caused injury. And the Lightning won the game, but they're going to lose the war, in my opinion. That's just you can't play without Cernak and Hedman against that offense um, for another and win three of the next six.
Well,
Now,
maybe if Toronto gives you so many chances on the power play, though. I mean, 4 power play goals in that opening game
yeah,
for Tampa
yeah.
Bay. That's
No, it
probably not a
was
good
it
idea.
was egregious how bad Tampa or Toronto played, and the equalizer for the depth on Tampa is that Ilya Samsonov looked awful. So, and
Well,
they
it's
have no choice but to keep putting him back out there.
100%. Yeah.
So they're screwed if he throws up another lemon in game two. They're screwed. Don't even make the trip. Just shake hands right then because you have nobody else to go to. You can't put in Joseph Woll and expect to outdo the Tampa Bay Lightning 4 games out of 5. So if you lose two, that's the problem for all these teams after game one is, and we do this every year. What you know it from being in the playoffs with your Kings and stuff. When you win one game, you feel like you're never going to lose again, and when you lose, you feel like you're never going to win again. So it's always, the next game. You're not eliminated till you're eliminated. That's why we say it's not a must win until it is a actual must win. But it gets very hard mathematical to you lose game 1 on home ice, okay. But if you lose game 2 on home ice, now you're going on the road 3 out of 5 games, and you have to win 4 of the next 5 games. So you're not out of it, but there's a lot of pressure on that game 3, and it's a very tough road from there. And the other team is going home to a raucous home crowd with the momentum and good vibes. So big games too here tonight and then tomorrow night for all the game 1 losers.
Pretty cool to see Seattle win their first ever playoff game in franchise history and do it on the road against the defending Stanley Cup champs. That's certainly worthy of attention.
Yeah, that was probably the most surprising first game 1 result to me.
Grubauer looked really good. We'll see if he can keep that going.
Yeah,
forward.
he can't. There's no way. I mean, he made a lot of great saves, and so did the post. And they were ringing iron all night. Those are going to start going in sooner than later. I mean, Colorado is so talented and had so many dangerous chances. And I can't see Grubauer playing that well 3 more times and getting that many breaks with the iron, the crossbar, and not only it making the save for him, but taking care of the rebound into the corner or firing it back out. I just can't see it happening. But Seattle gets their first win. They're not going to get swept. They don't have to. They go home for game 3 at worst in a split and have an opportunity to be up 2-0.
Kings pull one out against the Oilers. They score with 17 seconds left on the 2-man advantage. They had a power play, and then they pulled the goalie to send the game 1 into overtime, and then they win it on a power play goal in overtime. 3 goals in the third period, so the Kings definitely pulling one out there. And Connor McDavid, no points in his game 1 there, and of course he had 153 in the regular season.
Yeah, they scored all 3 goals in the third period.
They did.
It was 2-0 in after 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like the chances to continue that recipe, but they played well defensively. Special teams were ridiculous for both teams. The power play was good for the Kings, but good for the Oilers as well. So 5-on-5 was very even. And I haven't heard anything. I don't think Velarde or Fiala's are coming back.
Velarde is playing tonight.
All right. Well, I don't know if I would have played him personally, just because they're going to. The one thing I will say, and we haven't talked about it a lot, but you know this from watching the Kings all year, they're not a big team. They're not going to go out there and hit a lot of people, but they can get hit. And the Oilers have a big team. They went out and got some big guys, just a fourth liner like Nick Bjugstad, just throwing his body around and causing havoc. I think they're going to go after Velarde a little bit, and he wasn't a tough guy to begin with. So him injured, I only worry about him getting run as often as possible by the other team. Much like Doughty said, we're going to hit McDavid. I bet they're going to hit Velarde as much as they can just to test him and see if he's all right. But having won game 1, I probably would have held him out until game 3 on home ice, where I get to dictate the matchups when he goes on the ice. But we'll see how he does.
Golden Knights, 17 shots on goal in their first playoff game at home against the Jets. What is that? I mean, 17 shots on goal. My goodness. In a game?
Yeah, right. That's not good. And it makes it easy on Connor Hellebuck. And we said this years ago, but we've dismissed the Jets because they didn't play well since January. They've looked awful. And they bounced back here in the last couple of weeks to secure a playoff spot, but they're definitely built for the playoffs. They have a very big team. You talk about that, the size. They're built for this time of year, but they've never come through. So why would I think this year would be different? And it's one game. We'll see what happens in game 2. But if they take a 2-0 lead back to Winnipeg, that's a bad spot for Vegas, especially with what we talked about in net. You know, they have to go with Laurent Brossoit. They can't put Jonathan Quick in there. It'd be 8-0 in the first period with that corpse behind in net. So I think Vegas has got to. You'd expect more from them with the return of Mark Stone and on home ice and all that. And Jack Eichel's first ever playoff game.
Yeah,
and they
no
just
points.
came out. I mean, they got beat is what had happened. Winnipeg played great, and it's not like Vegas played bad. Winnipeg just played great.
I never heard of Morgan Barron, but I'm glad we're not talking more about him because he took a skate to the face that could have been really bad. They said he had 75 stitches. I saw the wound. It must have been like inside, underneath the surface or something. It didn't look like a
Well,
75
I think it's
stitch.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you heard Chris Chelios in the intermission talking about.
I know I avoid listening to him at all costs.
Yeah, well, he talked about they showed that and they asked, did you ever have to get stitched up like that? And he said, yeah, they had. He said he had about 50 stitches one night, and Stu Grimson was in there holding the wound to keep him from bleeding out. And he said it took him all night, though. He said there was no way I was returning to the game. The game was over, and they were still stitching me up. So he's like, the way they do it now, much better as far as the medical procedures. And
I say so. The guy came back. The guy came back in the game.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness. And
I thought it was very, very compassionate. I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was Chandler Stevenson for the Vegas Golden Knights. He saw what happened and he like grabbed his head and said, "Are you okay?" and looked at him like to help him out because he thought it could have been really horrible.
Oh yeah,
in
we're
the moment,
inches away from losing an eye.
I mean, in the moment when you've got like, how many guys were in the crease going for a loose puck? I mean, that thing was like, 7 starving guys diving for a sandwich or something. That was unbelievable. But I thought that was in the moment. I thought that was super compassionate of him to say like, "Hey, buddy, you okay?"
You'd have to think he was screaming, and in great pain. Remember Chris Pronger when he took the shot to the eye. You could hear him screaming in the third deck. So, yeah, but I mean, they're human beings. There's no rivalry here yet. So it's not if he dies, he dies kind of thing.
Any one player that kind of has stood out for you, jumped off the page, positive or negative so far? I mean, we talked about McDavid, no points. Samsonov didn't look good, but
Draisaitl's a beast.
Yeah,
he looked unstoppable, and they made the point that last year he was playing on one injured leg, and this year he's got 2 healthy legs. He just looks like a force out there. The surprise to me was Todd Bertuzzi. He looked really good. And
Tyler Bertuzzi?
Tyler Bertuzzi, yeah. Todd's that mongoloid retired guy that spawned Tyler. But
I don't think so. I don't think that's his dad. I think it might be his uncle or something. I'm pretty sure
it's obviously it's a relative, but he surprised me. Tyler surprised me. He looked really good for Boston, and seems like he's made for this time of year. Good acquisition there at the deadline. Beyond that, Carolina's defense is so big. God, they just one after another. Guys are like 6'4", 220, just one after the other, and they keep throwing them over there. The Islanders have no chance in this series. It's going to be 2-1, 3-2 games, and it's going to be a blowout every time. I just don't. The Islanders didn't generate any offense. There's nothing. It's always counterpunching, and it's not a successful way to get deep in the playoffs. You'll win a game here and there, but Ilya Sorokin did everything he could to keep him in that game, and it still wasn't enough. And maybe they win tonight and even it up before they go home to game 3, but I just think in the series, Carolina had the perfect matchup for them to kind of ease into, they're taking the steps into the pool. Everybody else is jumping into the deep end.
Biggest game of all the teams who lost their opener, is it obviously Toronto?
No, I don't think so. I think Edmonton needs to tie up the series. I think beyond that, I really don't think anybody needs to win, but I don't like Edmonton's chances if they lose tonight and go down game 2. Maybe Dallas, because Dallas played so well in game 1 and still lost. And if they lose with no Joe Pavelski, if they lose game 2 before going on the road, I think you're in trouble. Toronto is, they have the skill to come back in this series. It's just a matter of getting their minds right and getting past the mental hurdle of the pressure and all that. And I think maybe getting down 2-0 and being like, well, F it, let's not go out like this. Let's leave it all out there, and the pressure's off at this point. It's like I think about a pitcher every time I watch a baseball game. If a pitcher gives up a hit in the first inning, I kind of think, well, that's the pressure relief. No more worry about a no hitter or perfect game. Just throw your game now. And Toronto's like, look, we've already had a horrible game. There's no pressure now. It's just, well, there is, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there's no,
Yeah,
we're not going to do this perfectly.
I don't know that the pressure's ever off in Toronto.
No, but I think if they get down 2-0, I think it almost releases some of the pressure because so many people will say it's over. And they can then go out there with kind of a nothing to lose attitude. So I would say Edmonton and Dallas are probably in the biggest must-win situations of after game one. Maybe Vegas could be in trouble if they lose game two.
All right, Patreon fans, hope you enjoyed this little taste of what's coming up on Tuesday for the Puck Podcast. It's, again, 2 days in, and it's already been very interesting. So,
yeah, we've had suspensions. We've
lots
had,
of stuff to talk about coming up on Tuesday. Yeah,
I was going to ask you if Toronto loses game two and looks bad in the process.
Fire Sheldon Keefe on the spot.
Has a coach ever been fired mid-series? Because honestly,
that's a great question.
I would do it just to be like, you talk about a shock to the system. You're fired.
Yeah, I remember during the life of this show, we had a coach get fired right before the playoffs when they were going into the playoffs. That was Claude Julien in Boston,
Montreal. Yeah. Lou Lamoriello did that.
It was New Jersey. It had to be New Jersey then.
Yeah.
It had to be New Jersey. Yes, it was because Lou Lamoriello definitely did that. So that's the only thing I can think of. But no, that would be a very interesting question to do a Google search on. We'll see if we can.
Yeah, I mean, and why not at that point? You're going to fire him anyway if they lose the series. So
that would be a hell of a
Like I said, what a shock to the system.
All right, like I said,
and I'm very curious because if the Leafs lose and they're only down one game, and if they fire, I think they would only fire Sheldon Keefe. I don't think they'd fire Kyle Dubas. But if they fired Kyle Dubas, the problem would be the next GM would come in there and be like, well, look at this roster. I'm not going to make any moves here. I just need to do some tinkering. And that's what Kyle Dubas has been trying to do, which is why I think they would keep Kyle Dubas, and he would say to either Nylander or Marner or Matthews, somebody's got to go, and we got to bring in somebody significant on defense or in net. And it's just got to happen because we can't keep putting Band-Aids. I mean, Jack Campbell and Ilya Samsonov and Matt Murray, it's not going to happen. So they got to do something here. I don't know what it is, obviously, but I still think they'll win this series. I do. I know you didn't think they'd win to begin with, but I think especially with the injuries that Tampa has on defense, it's just going to wear them down too much. Those are big losses. Those are big minutes. So,
all right. That'll do it. Thank you, Patreon friends, for all of your support. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this little extra for you. And we'll talk to you next time on the Puck Podcast.